Today we're going to show you how to remove the front axle from a Porsche 996. I'm Justin, and before we go too much further, please subscribe for more great videos like this. So this is the front axle shaft from my 2001 996, and today we're going to show you how to remove this. Over time, these boots will tear, and in order to replace this, it's an $80 piece to replace, roughly, from Rock Auto. We'll link to that down below. But in order to replace this, you have to do a little bit of work. Let's go check it out. So we already have the car in the air, and we have removed the body panel underneath that we'll need to access the axle. We have also broken this bolt. You'll want to break this bolt with the car on the ground. It just gives you the torque you need to do it. So we broke the bolt, we've now got it in the air, and we're going to start removing parts so we can loosen up that axle. The reason we're doing this is because we are converting this car from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive. That's a much longer video, and we'll link to that one down below. But if you're just looking to replace your axle, we'll show you how to do it real quick.
So now that we've loosened this, the axle bolt, now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the knuckle for the steering arm. It requires a T40 Torx that just holds the spindle in place so that you can use an 18 millimeter socket. In this case, I'm using a ratcheting socket. So I'm able to hold this. This keeps the entire assembly from spinning and allows you to loosen the bolt. So Justin, if you hold that.
Yep.
So now I'm going to go ahead and just, and I will say it's pretty tight on here just because of grunge. You can see it's getting a little easier. And then there's two ways to take this to separate them. One is you can probably tap it with a hammer. It should drop down. The other way is to use a pickle. We're going to try a pickle first because it seems to be the most reliable. And then once that's done, we'll go to the next step. So this is a suspension piece. We call this a pickle. What it allows you to do is put the lower part of the steering arm knuckle in this groove right here. This clamps on top of the screw, and then we screw this, and it actually presses it down. Don't be surprised if it makes a bang when it separates. Sometimes they do. It's a little bit loud, and if you're not expecting it, it could startle you.
And we'll link to this kit down below in the comments. While Rob's getting the tool, I want to point out we actually bought new nuts. These are $15 a piece from Porsche. Anytime you take those off, you want to replace them with a new one.
Now, did you hear that snap? Don't let it startle you. It does pop. What we need to do is we have to loosen one of the lower arm bolts. The reason being is it allows us to move this entire assembly front and back, which is going to be important then when we take out the 6 bolts that hold the one end of the axle to the transaxle, right? So what we want to do is, we can't align the car. We're not experts. We don't have the gear. So we're going to make it as close as we can so that when we put it all back together, we can say, okay, this is basically as tight as we had it. We're going to make sure that the bolt and a part of the suspension line up, so then we'll know it's fairly close.
Enough to drive it to a place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what we have here, this is the rear bolt for the A-arm. What we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from the bolt through the head of the bolt onto the car itself. This will allow us, when we put the bolt back on, to align this very, somewhat accurately. So after you mark the rear eccentric bolt, we're going to remove, we're going to loosen this cross member here. It actually goes onto the body itself. What's nice, it has a rubber grommet, so it's somewhat flexible, right? So we're going to be able to move things around. On this, it takes an 18 millimeter on the bottom and a 21 millimeter on the top. Let's make sure we are loosening. Yes, we are. There we go. We're going to pull this out, and what we're going to do is always save our bolts. So to remove this bolt, I'm going to use an 18 on the front end and a 16 on the back end. It's on pretty tight, and as you can see with our room here, we can't get any big power tools on, so we're going to use what's known as a cheater bar. What this does, we hang oops, wrong end. We hang another wrench here and another wrench here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this as leverage. See how I use that cheater bar in there? It allowed us to really multiply our torque to be able to get the bolt removed, because just what you see here just didn't have enough torque, enough grip on it. Now what's nice about that is that when we're done, we can pretty much hand thread this thing out. And once again, we're going to put the nut back on top of the bolt so we remember where it is. Okay, now the last thing that we're going to do is, I think we got this loose, we have this loose, we just need to take this off. So we've done everything we need to do here. We've loosened this bolt here for the cross member. We've removed the bolt or the fitting for the steering arm. We've removed the lower or the lower A arm, the rear bracket. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come actually up into the axle itself. And there's 6 bolts. They're long. There's a lot of threads. You're going to have to kind of get after it. And each one of those bolts also has like a semicircle shaped washer. So all 6 of those need to be removed. So what we're going to do, Justin, if you'd get us some light, and we're going to remove these 6 bolts. What happens is we built a little extension, which Cousin Tom's going to show us. So what you have here is you have 6 bolts. Each one of them is connected by kind of a half circle washer, or an 1/8 circle, but it's a somewhat curvature washer. They're actually pretty easy to take out. You can use a power tool on this. They're not in that tight. It is a 6mm hex bolt. So these are hex heads. So you'll want to use an Allen, basically like what I would call maybe an Allen wrench. So what I'm going to do is line this up for Tom so we're square on it. So it's hard to show on camera. So this is, you can see there's a lot of threads on here, and you can see here is the Allen head. It's a 6mm. So another best practice, don't reuse these. They're fairly inexpensive. The best practice is always replace these. Anytime you do, this kind of a bolt on either side of the axle, these need to be replaced with new. Now all you have to do is get the rest of them out. You can reuse those half moon or semicircle washers that don't really, it's okay to reuse them, but these for sure need to go. So we're now going to take the other 5 out. So what we got to do now is you really need to rotate this axle, and it's pretty easy. Another best practice, which I don't think we ever mentioned at the top, make sure your car's in neutral. It makes it a little hard if the car's in gear. So before you put it up on the lift, make sure it's in neutral and we're good to go.
So here's a bolt and a half circle washer that he's talking about, and that's the half circle piece. Again, these are also cheap, so when you're buying parts, you may as well buy these too, so you have nice fresh parts.
So what we've done, we've removed the 6 bolts that hold the inside end of the axle to the transaxle. So now you can actually see now it's really loose here. You can see here I'm shaking it, right? That's the end. We've already separated. This is the transaxle here that we're going to be removing next. This is the axle here. We've got this nice and loose. That's one of the reasons we've taken all these bolts out, so we can pull the whole assembly out enough so that we can take like a hammer, a sledge to it, and knock the drive shaft through the spline so that it's loose and it can be removed. So that's what we're working on next. Okay.
So when you want to knock the axle shaft out of the hub, take the original axle bolt, because you're not going to be reusing it, put it on about 5 turns, make sure it's not flush with the shaft so you don't round the shaft off, and then you hit it with a sledgehammer.
So that is how you remove the front axle of a Porsche 996. We won't be putting a new front axle on because we are converting this car to 2-wheel drive. When you reinstall it, it's the reverse. And make sure you use the right torque to attach that new nut, 340 foot-pounds. Thanks for watching. If you want to see what the whole 2-wheel drive conversion is, watch down below. There's another video we made.